This evening, earlier before the town hall even began, it was clear that it was going to be a problem. Erica Garner, ES_snipes on Twitter, if you follow her, Eric Garner's daughter, was flown down to DC to participate, as were the family members of Alton, Sterling, and others. What's the young man? Dylan Noble's parents were there as well. That's the young white man that was murdered by Fresno police, I believe, last week, 19 years old. That video is that has come out is also bothersome because he was having, there was something wrong with him. Like I think he was distressed because at some point, I think that the video, the audio, it's something that's obvious. It's obvious that he's distressed, that he wasn't necessarily, he might have been a danger to himself, but that's no reason to kill him. But it's not even like the police, another one of those cases where the police can't even say that, oh my God, I feared for my life. Like, we need to be involved. We need to be engaged, and we need to be talking to mayors, city council folks, really put in the screws to folks in terms of administrative procedures. Find out exactly what the administrative procedures and stuff are for your local police department, so you know what are they supposed to be doing, what aren't they supposed to be doing. If they don't have, if it's not made publicly available, submit a request. It's public information, open documents. Like seriously. But she posted several different people who knew of the how it went during the taping. It was highly sanitized. She said she was promised that her questions would be answered by the president, and while she ended up getting a moment with him after the taping was done, none of her questions made it on air. Actually, for ABC. Just for some people who are just updating me on Facebook now, it was very controlled. The questions, for those of you who may have watched it. This does not help us have a meaningful conversation on race. Basically, trying to make white people feel good so that they're not feeling bad. I don't need you to apologize to me because you may or may not have had ancestors who may or may not have owned some of mine. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is we have issues today. We have a history that has never been completely adequately and properly addressed, and that has to change. So like I was talking about here in Atlanta, the young man, DeRavis Rogers, was murdered by Officer James R. Burris. And one of the sergeants here said he had no idea who was in the vehicle. He had no idea if that was the vehicle he should be concerned with. He just discharged his weapon. They would just shoot first and ask later. And it's always, instead of taking accountability, instead of owning up to if it was an honest mistake, instead of owning up to it, you then lie and try to cover it up. And save me the good cops nonsense, because there are quote unquote good cops out there who will either be silent or help in aid in the cover up. You're not looking out for your brother or sister in blue. You're frustrating justice. You're aiding and abetting a crime after the fact. You're an accessory. Like, seriously, it's a problem. It's very disconcerting. So what's happening now is, okay, so this officer has been fired. And this is actually kind of huge, because Georgia Bureau of Investigation, they've never done anything really in terms of cops and this type of misconduct. However, we had, I think it was an incident last year. We had a couple of incidents last year. We had one, I know the young man was unarmed. He was bipolar. And he was running naked through his, so it wasn't like he might have had he was running naked. And the cops make, it's not just mistakes. It's a reckless indifference and disregard for Black life. And save me the all lives matter crap. Yes, all lives allegedly matter, just like all men are created equal, right? 3/5. Yeah. So when we already know, when people in this country say all, they don't necessarily mean all. They mean the select few that includes whatever group they belong to. So this need to hold up these voices, this need to definitely fight for these specific incidences, doesn't mean that people like Dylan Noble aren't worthy of holding up and getting justice for as well. The whole damn system is corrupt. If you upset about Dylan Noble, then you should be upset about young Mr. Rogers right here. This is tragic. How do you just walk up and just start shooting in somebody's car and you have no clue what's going on, or if that's even a car that you should, not even a car he should have been concerned about? Doesn't even make any sense. Who does that? but we're supposed to be understanding. We're supposed to be respectful because, oh, they have a hard job too. There's a meme today that I saw somebody had on Facebook, and as a social worker that said all jobs matter. The social worker said, we go into the same neighborhood as these cops, but all we are, we don't have a gun, we don't have a bulletproof vest. All we have are our clipboards. I chuckled because that's kind of funny. Social workers potentially are in some volatile situations as well. Police officers, and this again is not to make light of when police officers are hurt or in the line of duty. I have friends, I have, extended family members who are police officers, definitely love and respect them all. But at the same time, there is something that's really wrong, insidious, and inappropriate, destructive, inhumane that is happening in police departments across the country. It is pandemic, it is problematic, and it absolutely has to be addressed. And it's not going to happen by, talking about mutual respect. This is not some nuclear weapons armistice we're talking about here. This is about people's lives. This is about, actually making sure that police, are not acting out of the bounds of their actual authority. Instead of creating new boundaries for the authority to justify what has been done, we need to actually hold them to a meaningful standard so that people can go home to their families. Today, the family, today's just so, it's really disheartening. It's really disheartening. And at the same time, we have this rise in, protecting police, we including the president and Secretary Clinton and others. At this time, it is, like I said, it's unfortunate when police officers are put in harm. It is unfortunate when you have incidences like happening in Dallas, but those are very, very rare in comparison, right? But somehow the country, legislators. And not just, and this is what I'm talking about Democrats. These are Democrats all across the country can get all up in arms about protecting police and hate crime legislation being extended, because Blue Lives Matter. But no one is willing, in terms of these legislators, in terms of the president, no one's really willing to take a hard stance on addressing the issue and police brutality, police killings, and lack of accountability. No one is willing to address the fact that prosecutorial discretion is dangerous and leave so much on the table. And we have people who walk in the streets with tons of complaints in their jackets. We have people who have repeat killings on their records. But we got to respect them. We got to understand what it's like to be in their shoes. If your job is too tough, if you can't cut it, do something else. This, again, doesn't mean I don't respect people or don't appreciate folks who do their job. When we had this debate on a friend's Facebook thread, one of my girlfriends here, she wrote a thread about what she felt needed to be done immediately, and other people chimed in. And one of the conversations we had, a friend who's a attorney general, works for the attorney general's office. Friend said, her police officers all have relationships with their communities. She's an African American woman. And I said, being in Charleston, this is back in Charleston, West Virginia. So in Charleston, West Virginia, that was actually probably my most positive experiences with the police officers. Why? Because they were a part. They were not just they lived in a community. They were a part of their community. Not saying that there aren't issues with cops in Charleston too. Of course there are. There are issues with cops all over the country. But the one time I remember I had two instances, both involving my son. And, white cops, little black boys, not a good combination. But there are experiences where people see people as people, right? Versus a threat, versus whatever. I don't know now how they would see my son now that he's 12 and 5'9", 5'10", and 150 pounds. But back then, these conversations, I think the Boy Scout uniform helps some. But, we need people to be accountable. And I understand why people talk about, the need for folks to be from these communities. But we have to be able to use our voice and like I said, people standing up, people demanding action, but we need people to stand with us consistently and not just when it's cool for the gram to be at a protest. We need people there even when the cameras are not there. And we need to continue having these conversations. I believe Sean King even said this in a previous interview with Ben. We need to continue having these conversations. We need to continue this dialogue beyond these high moments of outrage.